What's going on, guys? My name is Jake.
I'm Nicole.
This is Maui.
This is Kona.
And today in this video, we're going to talk about a question that we've been getting a lot lately, and that is, why did you leave New York City to move to Denver, Colorado? We've been asked this by friends, acquaintances, even people who don't really know us that well. So we figured we'd film a video and answer that question for y'all.
So for the last 3 years, we've both been living in New York City through different parts: Hell's Kitchen, Greenwich Village,
Little Italy,
Italy.
LES.
Yeah.
So from like Midtown down, we have a pretty good lay of the land. Granted, we didn't live in Kips Bay, but nobody wants to live in Kips Bay. So
Why are you
there's
calling out
that.
Kips Bay?
Because nobody wants to live in Kips Bay. You're not by any subways. You're not, like, literally, you're irrelevant.
Alright, well, not related.
End rant. But to answer that question, we want to go through our top reasons why we left New York City. It wasn't just because of COVID or anything like that, and I think it's important to really disclose why and why we're even here in Denver, because a lot of the videos we're going to film moving forward are going to be a little bit more Denver-centric, so it'll give a better lay of the land as to why we're here and what we're doing.
Yeah, so for some context, we did, during quarantine, go to Missouri where Jake's parents live, and that was probably a big reason that we did decide to move here, just because having more space and being outdoors. It was a very different way of life than coming back to the city into small apartments and like very
Confined spaces. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like it's tough to conceptualize having room until you have room for a couple months. Like, just going home to visit your parents on holiday isn't, I don't think, enough to really grasp how great it is to have a yard for the dogs, have more room for your own things. And so going from a place where we were literally had like our own basement to ourselves with a bathroom and everything, and then going back to a 400 square foot studio apartment, I think it was a big reality shift. And despite like us loving New York City and obviously everything that comes along with it, it kind of made us realize, like, okay, is this the right spot for us right now, especially with the two dogs who have way too much energy for us, especially if we're in a tight spot and so forth. So that was like the background as to our
timing.
Yeah, the timing of everything of it.
Another point of context, a year ago, I was actually visiting Denver for the first time ever. Jake and I had just broken up and like moved out of our studio apartment together. And I was texting him, we were still friendly, and I was telling him how
Friendly.
I was telling him how like I could see myself moving to Boulder in a year, like at the end of my lease. And he said in a year, if we were still talking, that we would move to Boulder.
Crazy foreshadow. And I had also visited Denver too in late October to visit my little brother who lives here. So we actually had both been to Denver at different times last year, around this time actually, somewhat relatively, but yeah, it's pretty crazy foreshadow.
Yeah. So getting into the reasons why we chose Denver, first off was the outdoors.
Yeah. Being in Missouri, I think really like re-sparked that love for the outdoors. I think at times you can forget about it a little bit in New York City, and yes, you can drive to parks and so forth in New York City outside of Manhattan, but when you don't really have a car that's regularly...
It's less accessible.
Yeah.
It is way more of an ordeal than really just being here.
That's a good way to put it, because then it's like, yeah, if you don't have a car, then you have to book a train, you have to pay for the train tickets. It's like, it's a process versus just hopping in your car and literally driving 30 minutes and you're on like a beautiful 10-mile hike. So I think Missouri helped re-spark the love for the outdoors that, honestly, on a personal level, I had forgotten about, being in the city for like the last 9-ish years, like, or being in New York metro area, at least for that matter. We've been here for 2 weeks. We've already gone on like 2 different hikes and saw like stuff that we could never even imagine when we were in New York. We have all these different hobbies that we want to start.
Neither of us were really big like skiers or snowboarders, but we definitely want to try.
Yeah.
And being here is definitely going to give us that opportunity too. Also, something we realized when coming here last year, like separately, is in New York, and not that we don't enjoy drinking, but in New York, like the main recreational activity is drinking. And here there's just so much more to do.
Yeah, and we say main recreational activity, like, it's because it's like among our peers. Like, there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do that's not drinking. I just think like, yeah, it's not like your go-to on the weekends. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like on Saturday night we're like, oh, let's go get hammer drunk and go to like the box or like some weird, or LES. We're like, hey, let's grab a drink or dinner early, go to bed early, and then let's wake up early and go hike or like be active all day. So like the outdoors is definitely a big driver. Plus like golf, for example, is really cheap here, and there's so many courses. So I've been golfing more. We want to start rock climbing. We're buying kayaks soon. We brought our bikes here. Like there's so many outdoor perks.
Yeah, there's so many things we want to try. Kind of tangentially related reason to the outdoors is that Denver happens to average about 300 sunny days, 69% sunshine.
It's a good number.
Right behind Miami and the largest cities that get the most sun. So
yeah, and I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
yeah, I just looked that up
because
before this.
We're both very affected by the season and sun and so forth. Two, we wanted more space. So on top of the outdoors, I think going from having space to going to not having space, it's a big shift. And even if you don't think you need space, like I think you always end up needing space. Like there's always wait, what?
No, sorry. In New York, I'm sure you know, apartment sizes are not very generous. And you are paying a lot for the small space that you are in.
Which is like to be expected and normal because New York is such an amazing city. So it's like I don't think it's a matter of it's like you don't really mind paying for it because when you're in just the cusp of New York, you're like, yeah, this is just what it is. But I think if you have the opportunity to choose space over non-space, I think anybody's always going to pick space in their right mind. So having space was definitely a big reason why we came here. For context, like I went from a 380 square foot apartment to now what do we have, like 1250? So we almost like 4 times our space, which has been great for the dogs too because they just have even more room to run around in here besides having the outdoors so close to them.
Yeah, definitely good for the dogs. We've been talking about this too as we've been decorating the apartment. Like we're not used to not needing to use every inch for like some kind of functional purpose. Like right now we can have like a ladder bookcase and like display things and like flowers. It's just kind of a weird concept for New York City living.
And also like the bigger topic here, and we'll probably film a video on this later on. I don't know, the first time we broke up when we lived together, we lived in a tiny studio, and I contribute a lot of our failures to just not being able to adapt to that and being too on top of one another. So having room and having a 2-bedroom more specifically has kind of really helped with us just having our own room. So like if we have a fight, like one of us can get away and go to the other room or just get some air and get some space. And that I think is absolutely huge.
Honestly, just like having the door makes that much of the difference.
No more hiding in the bathroom and crying.
Which you did all the time.
Me, yes, I did that all the time. The third reason is because we have job flexibility now. So I was working full-time as a fitness editor for the last 4 years in New York, and I recently quit my job to be an entrepreneur. And now I can be remote and be kind of anywhere and everywhere.
And similarly, I switched roles from a project manager to more of a developer. So I have like the autonomy in my schedule, and as long as I get my deliverables done, I've worked out with my team that I can be remote.
Yeah. So just being able to be a little bit more nomadic, I think, is also mentally freeing. And yeah, just knowing that we're young enough now to do it. Let's do it for at least a year, figure it out after that. It's just like, I don't know, it's like a whole different shift of mindset. And being able, I think, to just do that is very powerful.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, a lot of people like always say like, oh, I want to move there and try that, but they never end up doing it. So now that we had the opportunity, we're like, we got to pull the trigger and go and just see.
Yeah, and somewhat related, so Jake's job obviously is like very fitness relevant, and Denver is such a fit city. And there's so many like box gyms here, so many CrossFit gyms.
It's a fitty.
I don't think is that a thing?
It's a fitty.
I don't think that's a thing.
Number 4, cost of living.
Yeah, so I mean, this kind of goes with the space issue, but just so much cheaper here.
Yeah, I mean, it's relative though, right? Because Denver is still expensive to a lot of folks. But when you're used to paying New York City prices, I think we just like accept that we have to pay like $2,000 for a tiny little shoebox studio. And the moment you realize like, oh shoot, I can get so much more for so little, Yeah, well, I guess that would be the right terminology here. It's kind of like opens your eyes. Like we're paying now like 200 more together than what I was paying alone in New York City. So that's saving us a cumulative like $600 to $800 to $900 each a month, which is like phenomenal, especially because like we're in a luxury apartment. Like we have a parking spot, we have a pool, we have a gym, like all these things, washer, dryer, and unit.
Oh my
dishwasher
God.
right here. Things that you don't realize, like, holy crap, these are amazing until you really have them. We have now, which has been like not in our life for the last 3 years.
Coffee is kind of the same price though, and we
Yeah.
do still
Drink a lot of
waste a
coffee.
good amount of money on coffee.
Okay, first off, it's not wasting if you love
Yeah, I
it.
used the wrong word there.
It's not wasting if you love it.
Dad, please don't listen.
That's how I justify it. But yeah, it's like, and also I think it's important to note, like, money wasn't the reason, like wasn't like one of the main reasons why we left, right? It was never an issue with us wanting, like, never like paying New York City rents and stuff for, like, that's never been an issue for us. But I think when you have the option to save and you want to move and so forth, it like makes it easier to do so.
Yeah. Well, I think for some of our long-term goals, like each of our goals and the things that we talk about together,
Yeah.
like saving money to accomplish some of those is definitely was part of the factors.
Yeah. Plus, like, I was a writer for the last 4 years, so I'm pretty poor. So saving money is cool.
All right, our last point is trying something new. I've been in New Jersey and New York for 26 years, which is my entire life, with the exception of like a couple months here and there for internships. But I have never really been west. When people were asking me like, what is Denver like, even just like talking about moving here, I had no idea what to say. Like, I don't know this area at all. I don't really know anything outside of New York and New Jersey. So I feel like it was a good opportunity to try something new.
Yeah, and I think our dynamics are very different. Like, I think you're so much more like calculated and go like this, and I'm more of like fly by the seat of my pants. Like, I left Missouri when I was 19 to move to New York. I had never visited like where I was going to school. I had no idea what I was getting into, but like I love that like mindset of like doing something new and changing everything, because I think it opens up your mind to just being so much more free in a lot of ways. And it's like when you walk to work a different way every part of the week, right? And it's like said to like build like different connections in the brain. I think it's like similar here. Like,
That's so funny you say that, because I like walk to work the same way every day because I calculated like the most efficient route.
yeah, and I actively try to change my shit as
Yeah.
often as I can.
Yeah. So I think it's like something that I'm kind of learning to do, to be a little less like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a checks
Controlling
checks
over
and balances though.
Yeah.
Like you're becoming a little more free, but you're also like kind of wrangling me back in and stop being so reckless with some of my decisions. Which
Yeah.
which
Maybe
is-
not reckless, but
No,
like
not
more
rec-
calculated.
Yeah, just a little bit less free.
More strategic.
Yeah, strategic. That's a good way to manipulate me. Yes. Strategic. That's what it is. It's strategy.
So that wraps up the reasons why we chose Denver and why we chose to move out of New York City at this point in time.
City. Hopefully this helps answer some of the questions or thoughts that you've been having, and if you've been thinking about Denver, maybe this helped sway you a little bit. But in our next video, we are going to be doing a full-on apartment tour, and yes, we'll show a little bit of our old apartment so you get some context. And yeah, I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nikki's been really pushing me to finish everything in here so we can film this video.
Bye.
Bye. Little Buddha. There's a Shiba out there. Two Shibas.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Shibas.